Welcome to the February 10th edition of the PFF Forecast. It is Thursday afternoon, about 3 p.m. here. It's getting rowdy at Radio Row. This is happy hour, basically, at this point. There are some players here. It's a good time. We are going to do our final podcast before Super Bowl Sunday comes around. We have a really cool guest, Johnny Avello, who's a Sports Gambling Hall of Famer, and is the guy behind DraftKings trading and their line setting at the DraftKings Sportsbook. So it's a really cool conversation. We're also going to talk about all of the bets that Eric and I, mostly Eric, have made already on this game. A lot of prop bets and where we would place our bets right now if we had to. Here we go. Let's rock. Okay, what's the count right now?
Some of these are like middles, but 48.
48. It was 43 like 30 minutes ago. That is the total number of bets. What's the line?
Tyler over here just laughing.
What's the line on where it closes at?
Well, let's say Thursday. 59.5 probably, don't you think?
I'll take the over.
They keep adding more. Like there's one that I just got today that I feel really good about. And it was one where I like sort of picked it off. There's around the market, like Mixon is basically, minus 110. It's a little bit like it's juicier, maybe like minus 105 to even money to have more rushing yards than Cam Akers. But I was able to find him plus 6.5 yards against Cam Akers at like minus 120. So I was like, I took that. I think Mixon's going to have more. Mm-hmm. But like even just like the price discrepancies things, like where you see one somewhere that you think is maybe a better book, and then you have an offshore book that offers a better number. Like that's kind of what I've been trying to do this entire week. And there's some opportunity there.
Let's do a top 5 right now prop bets. If you had to of the 49, 51, as it probably has grown already in this podcast. We've talked about the Cam Akers unders. That line has moved around a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think it's gone back down after an initial, because it reopened with the Superbook at 68.5, which is, above where I had gotten it. And you saw it move up in a lot of different places. But I believe you've seen it move down as of recently. If you look now, it's 64.5 on DraftKings now. It opened there at 62.5. Most of what I have is at 65.5. So yeah, I mean, that was an interesting one. You're getting Michelle 16.5 there. That's like sort of the complimentary piece. Michelle, the over is minus 125 there, which I think speaks to a little bit of what the narratives are going to be in that game with the complimentary back.
Yeah, there are a couple that I like, not going in any particular order here, but I'll start with Tyler Higbee. Are you able to find this in some place? Because there's question around whether he's going to play, but if you can find it, under 5.5 receptions.
Yeah.
This has been, so if he's going to play, then you'll probably be able to get this, and I would just keep a note of it. We've seen Kendall Blanton play incredibly well. It's kind of been a revelation. And Higbee, if he's going to try and grit it out,
I think you're going to see it more like 3.5.
You think so?
Yeah, by the time if he plays, I think he and the tight end for the Bengals, CJ Uzomah, I think you're going to see them more.
CJ can really walk
in the 3.5 range. It's really interesting. Both tight ends in this game are important players, and both are extremely hampered. Here's another one that I like. And I put on the top of my list. I was talking to Kevin Clark about this in the media break room. I like Joe Burrow over 24.5 completions. I know that's a number that's been bigger maybe than the narratives are suggesting, but I think that there's a real belief that a lot of Joe Mixon runs in this game are going to be replaced by Joe Mixon passes. Mm-hmm. And the linebacker level for the Rams I mean, passing allows you in some ways to bypass the line of scrimmage where the Rams are amazing to the linebacker level where the Bengals have an advantage. And I think that's maybe what they're thinking about doing, eschewing the early down runs that both teams are bad at. Both teams have kind of the same exact, offensive scheme, basically. Not really, but, similar kind of tendencies and stuff.
Yeah.
And so not, Burrow over completions, Burrow over attempts is a good look in the sense of there's a number of different outs. Like, that's what you want to do when you're betting these props, in that, like, instead of betting Bengals plus 4.5 or instead of betting over, you want to have props that don't necessarily need either one of those outcomes to happen to be true. The Bengals, if they have a winning approach, Burrow's probably going to be very efficient completing the ball. If the Bengals have a hard time doing anything and get behind, he's going to have to complete balls, So really the only out is sort of like a game where the Rams really control the ball and turn the ball over, and Cincinnati wins as a result of mistakes by the Rams. And I don't think that's that big of an area of the space.
Yeah. One that's kind of correlated with that is one of the bigger mismatches in this game. It's not the Donald interior line mismatch that we've talked about ad nauseum, but this is the other cornerback for the Rams. And T. Higgins has the 9th highest PFF grade. Darius Williams ranks 79th out of 120 cornerbacks in PFF grade. Jalen Ramsey, the highest graded corner. You've got to figure they're going to try and put him on Jamar Chase as much as humanly possible. And so T. Higgins, whether it's over 5.5 receptions, I think is probably my favorite one. He's had 7 and then 6 in his last 2 games, and has been, a real, like, you can tell Joe Burrow has confidence in him. And that's definitely one of my favorites.
That plays into one of my favorites as well, which is an alt, and you have to be careful about this. Like, you either have to go somewhere like offshore, or you have to use sort of a parlay builder or something within like FanDuel or DraftKings. But I got this offshore. I actually have Tyler Boyd over 80.5 yards at plus 265. So essentially you're moving, because I think that this is how Boyd's season's gone, right? You look at his season averages, it's more around like 50 yards. His prop number's at like 40.5, and that's because he sort of has the games where he doesn't do anything. So he has a game with 73 yards, 118, 69, 85, 96, and 85. The last 4 games he has 36, 26, 17, 19. To me, it's Boyd, the 40 is kind of this like irrelevant number. Either Boyd's going to have a big game, in which case, if you bet him over 40.5, you're kind of like, oh, who gives it? He goes 7 for 110. You're like, fuck that, Or he's going to go 2 for 30, and you're going to be like, oh crap, he just missed it. Whereas like if I'm betting plus 265, I'm kind of like, well, if he goes 2 for 30, that's fine. It was a long shot anyway, and chances are, if he's the guy in this game, he's going to be the guy to the tune of 85 yards, not 45 yards. And that's kind of how I view the secondary player or tertiary player actually for the Bengals.
I really like that in large part. So the nickel for the Rams, David Long Jr., 61 PFF grade in coverage this year, middle of the pack from a cornerback perspective. Tyler Boyd, kind of the forgotten guy, right? But he's been a consistent piece of that Bengals receiving core. Higgins and Chase are the new guys. So maybe there's a little bit of like, okay, let's get some quick throws out. That definitely favors the slot, where average time to throw is not as long as waiting for Jamar Chase to get down the football field. You think about trying to mitigate Aaron Donald. That's definitely one way that you would hope that Zach Taylor would approach it. I think that with 2 weeks, like, even though we haven't seen Zach Taylor be Picasso with these game plans, you got to think they get some passes out quickly. So I really like that one. From a rushing prop perspective, I'm curious if you were at all interested in something like Sony Michel, because when I watch Cam Akers and Sony Michel, even though he didn't recover from a torn Achilles, is the better looking running back on the football field. So if you can get him, what I see here is over 26.5 combined rushing and receiving yards at minus 110. I love that.
Yeah. And it's not even, I think this is where you get an edge. I don't even think he's the better looking back. I actually think Cam Akers looks explosive. It just doesn't work. right? Like he, for whatever reason, is like.
I defer to you on explosivity.
Yeah. And it's true about every running back that's literally ever come back from an Achilles, right? Like Akers has come back quicker, but not effective. And Michel is, Sony Michel, this is his second Super Bowl game. He scored the sort of go-ahead touchdown in his previous Super Bowl, right? When you look at him this year, he's just been flat out more effective than Cam Akers. This season he averaged a little bit over 4 yards a carry. He had the 845 yards. I know, they traded we talk about them going all in. They traded a 4th-round pick for him. Maybe he ends up being the back in this game, and you really like that. The market has played just a tip with that idea sort of all week. I don't know. I mean, you could be really disappointed. It could be one of those things again where if you think about a rushing prop for him, maybe put it at 45. Let me look at a book and see what that ends up looking like. You could get because again, this is either or. Like, right. I don't think Michel is like, how many carries do you think Michel needs to get to his 16 and a half?
26 and a half
yeah.
Combined. Maybe 5.
Right. So the question becomes, because he had the 1 carry against Tampa,
right.
And the only reason he had carries against San Francisco was because Cam Akers had a little bit of a shoulder injury during the game. So again, this is one of those where, do you really want to necessarily bet him over the median or mean, or do you want to sort of take it more of a Boolean approach and say he's either going to get nothing, and I don't really care what the number is if it's positive,
right?
Or do I want to bet him maybe like over 40? Maybe he gets the or a 50-50 roll, or he gets the actual like bell cow carries, in which case he goes over really early, and you're like, man, I wish I would have taken a plus price at 45 yards or something like that.
I like that you got Boolean into the podcast. That's really impressive.
I can't find. Here I go with Michel. So let's say you bet him over 50 yards at this book is plus 152. Over 80 is plus 430, right? So, and we do know that the Bengals, they give up 0.07 yards per early down rush, or EPA per early down rush. They're not the greatest running defense in the world. They're still okay. But that would be my thought process. There would be, if you think Michel's going to have a role, then buy into the alts, because if he has a role, 20 yards is nothing.
T. Higgins, by the way, to score a touchdown in this game at any time TD is plus 165. I don't like that as much as the 5.5 receptions, but I like it as well. Give me another prop.
Here, so yeah, this is
do 2 more.
Okay, 2 more. Okay, here's one I like. I like Los Angeles over 3.5 punts. That's plus 125. Okay. The Bengals are a favorite to go over 3.5 punts. The Rams are not, but the Rams don't go for 4th downs. They don't, they're generally speaking not very woke. And the Bengals are a defense that kind of has played pretty well of late. And Stafford, this is kind of in correlation. I'll give these as correlated plays, but the Rams over 3.5 punts, Stafford no interceptions. You can get a pretty good price. Most places it's plus 110. I got it at FanDuel at plus 128. So plus 128 is obviously the best number you can get there, I think. So those are correlated, right? Because if Stafford throws picks, they're not going to, they're not going to punt. They only punted once against the Niners because of turnovers and missed field goals and stuff like that. But prior to that game, they had been punting more. If they get out ahead too, this is another situation where, if you remember, the Tampa Bay Kansas City game last year, where the Kansas City Chiefs got killed by the Bucs, when the game is like no longer in, if you're betting like Los Angeles -4 or something, or you're trying to hedge against Cincinnati, if this game gets out of hand really quickly, then LA could be like 3 plays and punt, much like they were in the Tampa Bay game. In the game with Tampa Bay versus Kansas City last year, Tampa Bay punted 4 times, right? Again, it's this idea of like they get out ahead, and then the fourth quarter is just 3 plays and punts, and that could get you over the total there.
This is one that I like quite a bit. Our player props tool likes quite a bit. This is over Cooper Kupp rushing yards at a half, plus 250. What's the thought process here? Well, the thought process is they're going to try and stop, the Bengals are, Cooper Kupp from catching the football. So what are you going to do? put the ball in his hands on a reverse, give him the ball. Maybe we see him a little Debo Samuel wide back setup. I think that if you're McVay and you're saying, okay, team has had 2 weeks to scheme against my offense, who are they going to try and take away? It's Cooper Kupp. And you've just played the Niners, twice in the past 5 weeks and seen what can be done with putting your great wide receiver all over the field and giving him some carries. So I like that one quite a bit. I'll also say from a rushing yards perspective, Joe Burrow's rushing yards prop is 10.5. Now, based on my religion, I'm going to take the over on Joe Burrow's rushing yards prop. Matt Stafford is 4.5. I'm also going to take the over there. Matt Stafford's one chance to win a Super Bowl. I mean,
yeah, those are good. I think obviously those are ones where you can get it in one play. For the most part, Burrow had been going under that number for a while, and then against Kansas City he went, under that number for a while, went over against Kansas City.
Yep, 25 yards.
I do have some on Stafford and Burrow as well. Those ones, I mean, even the Stafford one, I got 5.5. You're getting 4.5. You're getting a better number than I did. Here are some other ones I like. I like anytime touchdown scorers. I like Jefferson.
What's that price at?
I just have it where I got it 13-1. I also have Boyd.
Like that a lot.
I also have Boyd at 11-1. These are things with guys like Jefferson and Boyd. I'd much rather. We had this on DeMarcus Robinson when it was Chiefs Niners. Like either DeMarcus Robinson was going to do nothing, or he was going to go, start a game and play games. Like, in a lot of these, if you're going to go over or you like the player, just bet them long tail stuff, touchdown, bigger yards, more of a payout. If not, bet them. Honestly, for some of these players, find an alt line for no catches or something like that. If you think Boyd's going to get, you don't think this is a Tyler Boyd game, put your money out. Make it 1 for 7 is the only way you win. But then you'll get paid out substantially if it doesn't. Here's my last one, or my these two are also correlated, and so I'm going to put them together. I think that I have this at -120. I also have it -115. I have it -111, and I have the other one at -111. The Rams to take the first time out of the game is my heroine. And the Rams to be the first team to challenge. And this is the last one at -102. The first challenge of the game is unsuccessful. I am buying in on Sean McVay being somewhat and again, look, we've been Rams haters the whole year, all this kind of stuff. And I will fully acknowledge the Rams have made it, right? They've made it. I think McVay is a terrific coach at a lot of things. I'm betting on him being a donkey in the specific way that he's been a donkey almost his whole career. And that's with taking early timeouts. That's with challenging things that have no chance. And that's with, stuff like that. So
at least you're true to yourself.
I'm true to myself.
That's the one thing that I really like about you. You're a principled man. And for that, I'm grateful. I will say this. If you are thinking about betting the whole game, what's your favorite kind of game bet? Because I think
Sure.
Yeah.
We're going to give away a little bit of the product today if you're okay with that.
Cool
PFF
with that.
Green Line, PFF Elite subscription, go get it.
25% off, Super 25.
Our number for the total is a little bit over. And I sort of knew that was going to happen. I bet under 50, 49.5, 40. Johnny, who's going to join us a little bit later, had talked about that steam. But and I bet over 48.5 a few times because that's what our model likes. So I have kind of that 1 point middle, but that 1 point is on 49, which is a key number. Relatively key number. It's still not plus EV because it's not enough,
Yeah.
But for a game like this, it's fun to even shoot for a middle because it's a long shot. And I've constantly bet over because of what he said, which is these Super Bowls when the whales come in and start to bet. We haven't even seen that come in, like the rich folks going into Vegas and betting the 10K and stuff like that. This is the one game where the public does have a say on where the numbers go. So I've bet over 48.5, a decent amount. But my favorite bet on side or total is Cincinnati +3 first half. That's the one that I think, again, and Johnny said it should be 2.5. I totally agree. I think this game might play close early, and all we're doing is looking at the fact that the Bengals played kind of a crappy first half. Like it's narrative.
That's
driven.
exactly what it is, and I'm with you 100%. This is so. We talked about the national anthem on Tuesday with Drew. It appears that information has leaked, so you can no longer bet the national anthem. We'll see. I'm sick, honestly, with the way that this is transpiring.
Our friend Rob Pizzola messaged me and goes, "It wasn't a bad run."
Yeah,
because apparently, I mean, this has been something that sharps and recreational plus players have been getting for years at the same numbers we were getting. And it sounds like Warren Sharp gave it away to his subscribers, and that has caused a lot of high level bets, and that has caused it to go down in a lot of markets, and it's a shame.
It's a damn shame. So we are renaming the national anthem syndicate to the Joey Burrow first half +3 syndicate.
Were you gonna call it the Skyline Syndicate or the?
No, we're not calling
Jeff
it the
Ruby
Skyline.
Syndicate.
It's the Cartier Glasses Syndicate. That's
Jeff
what it
Ruby
is.
Syndicate.
Yeah, there it is. The Ruby Syndicate. We're gonna go feast after we win that. We have a great interview with Johnny Avello coming up for you right now. So that will be how we close out the podcast. Here he is. Welcome to the last pre-Super Bowl PFF forecast. We have a couple of very special guests on the show today. The one that we're about to talk to really needs no introduction, but we'll introduce him anyways. Johnny Avello. And you remember the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame? You've done a few kind of cool things in your life. What is the way that you like to tell people hey, this is what I do now. This is my kind of day-to-day. This is what I'm doing. How would you introduce yourself?
My boss calls me a Swiss Army knife.
Okay.
So, initially I was brought on to build a trading team in Vegas and help get that process going because we were relying on another trading platform overseas. And so I did that, but I kind of got my hands on a lot of things, player development. I work with the retail team we're going to open up bricks and mortar locations. I'm the commissioner of the Sports Betting National Championship.
Okay.
And of course I work with the traders and odds team on various projects. So I love it. I love doing all those things. It just keeps the everyday fresh.
And gambling seems like the sort of thing where you're in it for life if you get in it at a certain time, and you've certainly been. I mean, you moved to Vegas right before 1980 or so, and now you've been in the industry for so long. George and I are always so curious about how a lot of these things are made, right? We build algorithms as a part of PFF. Our data supplies a lot of the either the vendors or even the sports books themselves. But I think the average bettor would be pretty interested in sort of knowing how a line is made, right? And then even within a game, live stuff, how does that end up happening? And it's extremely nuanced and complicated. I'd be interested to see sort of your summary of that process.
Yeah, I'll try to answer that question in about 25 parts. So,
well, here's the thing. How do people envision it being made? I think people's in their mind, they're like, some guy gets in a room with really important people and he sticks a Post-it note to the front of the room. It's -4. And then people talk him off of that or onto that and that's how they align at the line. That's my guess as to how people think it's made.
I've actually done it that way before on sports that I'm not too familiar with. So yeah, I've done the old dart trick. To go back to the initial part you said about the gambling getting in your blood, It's so true. I mean, when I moved to Vegas in '79, I could deal all the games. I could deal dice, roulette, craps, and so I actually did that for my first 5 years until I moved over to race and sports. Now, once I moved over to race and sports and got into odds making, it was all done by hand. I got an Excel spreadsheet. I'm making power ratings on each and every team, and then I'm using those power ratings to make my line, and it was good. But in today's world, it's got to be a little bit better than that because player has so much information. So our lines have to be more precise. So yes, we still do some of that kind of work to get something initially. Like if you said, Johnny, what's the odds on these two teams? I'd throw something out and be close. But we use data for algorithms to come up and spit out a lot of things we do because it's so much more than just a line on a game. It's about alternative lines.
Yeah.
It's about all those prop bets. Now who would have time to actually do all those things? On an Excel sheet. It's just impossible.
Well, that's exactly it. And then when you guys build new lines, those are like, for us, we think about building products, but like in a sports book, that's a product, right? So if you wanted to offer like a same game parlay, which you guys do,
Yep.
or like an alternative line. So let's say you wanted to bet the Bengals -2.5 instead of +4.5. You got to be able to price that out properly and all that kind of stuff. And obviously that's there's too many degrees of freedom for any one person to do by hand. But then there are also these markets where you do still do it by hand. I was talking to another somebody, a head of trading at another sports book this week, and like literally for the MVP, it was one of those where it's like, okay, here's here's Stafford and how he can win the MVP, and then here's the daylight between him winning the MVP and the Rams still winning and all that. And so it's interesting, sort of like the art and the science that goes into creating, bookmaking, really.
Yeah, there's correlations is what it is. So same game parlay, you would never be able to bet, lay 10 points and go over 32, 33. Yep. I mean, that's a correlation because if they covered a 10, they're probably going to go over. Yep. So what we've done with same game parlays, we've made it so we've built in the odds to let you bet that, but you won't get the same value would have gotten.
You can't get three things that are so correlated that it's like, this is a gimme if one hits, right? And that's the interesting thing too, is like, how do you, because the average bettor, we talk to a lot of like average bettors, right? Because they buy, our product and we want to learn, like, how do they think about betting? And one of the interesting things is how confused they often are with just about everything. The average bettor can't tell me what -180 means. Can't tell, he really has no concept of whether, what that price means about the break-even odds or anything like that. So with something like the same game parlay, I'm curious, like, how much of this do you feel like, oh, we've got to kind of like educate the bettor because so many guys are, so many people are new to betting, and also just create a product that's like exciting because a lot of people aren't actually going in and saying, oh yeah, let me spend 10 minutes learning this.
We don't even put up the odds on it. What we do is you build your parlay, and at the end it'll tell you what your odds are.
You're not showing them as
you don't even have to worry about any of that. And to your point, you are entirely correct. I think what we've gotten away from is, I come from the background where 14-1 is 14/1. Plus 450 is 9-2. And now we're telling, I hear people all the time on TV saying, you get, plus 4,500. Well, you're getting 45-1. You're not getting 4,500 to 1. So we've confused the public. And I think what we need to do is kind of dumb this down a little bit and educate them more on and I think we would get more participation if we did.
And isn't that like the hard part about being a bookmaker is there's tons of average bettors that you have to worry about engaging them in the product, but then there's the sharp bettors that you have to worry about creating sharp lines as well. So there's sort of like two things that I would imagine you consider the sharp bettors the harder ones, right? Because the other ones are kind of coming in at a coin flip on each side, kind of balancing out the action, and you're taking the vig. But then the sharp bettors, you have to entice certain people while also not limiting, but also keeping the players at bay. Yeah, it's a really hard problem.
I love, and I'll say this, dancing lay. I love the sharp players, and I'll tell you why I love them. Because when I had a retail book, let's call Win. I ran a Win for 13 years before I came to DraftKings. A sharp guy would come in and he'd say, I want to bet that prop for $10. And of course I'd give it to him. And now he's telling me that your line is wrong or something's wrong. And now I move the line and now
it's a consultancy service for you.
No doubt. Yeah. And what we've done, and I would accuse us at DraftKings of doing it too. Guys now are getting $100 sometimes on a bet, and it's wrong. Now, the reason it makes it so difficult for us is because we're in 18 states. We've got a lot of users. So how do you let 3,500 people all at the same time bang your prop? So you kind of have to figure out. And hey, look, and this is a problem that I'm still, trying to figure out and trying to help the company figure out, because I think there's a fair way to do it. We just have not come up with it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to profile a player because it's sort of this, like, how many bets does one need to know if a player's sharp, right? And so you can.
So how do you
I can honestly tell you 3, because the first one you got lucky, second one maybe so, Third one, you're you
Okay.
know what you're doing.
And how do you measure it? Is it line movement more so than win or loss? I mean, I would imagine it's but a sharp player who has maybe an edge over the sports book, his bet or her bet is not going to move lines initially, right? Because no one else in the market sort of has that information either. So it is a really tricky problem, isn't it?
It is. There's actually a couple different kinds of sharp bettors. There's the kind that's just flat out good. You know, he's a good handicapper, and you know, he's kind of maybe stays under the radar, like you said, maybe not a lot of line movement, but he's good. He picks winners. He knows what he's doing. And then there's the guys that just look for the best number all the time. And of course, you take a game of football, anytime you're on either side of 3, you know, he's always taking the better number there. On the other side of 7, on the other side of 10, those now those kind of guys don't worry me too much, but they do always look to get the best value.
So this is something that's also interesting because, like, the average bettor, right? Their goal, and this fascinated me when I started asking these questions. You go, why do you bet? And you're expecting them to say, I want to win. Not even remotely close to the most popular answer. Most popular answer is, I want a reason to watch the game, right? I want to get some investment in the game, and I want to pay kind of as low of a price as I can, right? That's why the parlays are so exciting, because $10 is, I don't care, but I just want the chance to win a lot of money. And what's interesting about that is that's like so not what you'd expect, right? From people that are going in and betting. And as you think about that with people coming in and betting on games, how does that perspective maybe change the way you guys think about making products? Like, is that something that you guys are thinking about? You're saying, okay, the same game parlay might be a good example of that. Like, how did that come about? Is that how you were thinking of, we should create something like this?
Yeah, we're trying to make bets. First of all, we try to put up a lot of content, whether it's the core sports and going deep with props or cornhole. I mean, we're actually doing cornhole for our 2nd year.
Really?
We have Academy Awards up, which actually draws a lot of women to play.
I bet that for like 5 straight years. It's really fun.
So
really
we have it up now on the site. So we're always looking for new content. You know, there's people out there that want to have what we call a little bit of skin in the game. Yep. Now, let's face it, if we weren't able to make a wager on the game, how many NFL games would you really watch?
I'm not watching. Like 3 times as many bettors and DFS players watch 3 times as many games as just an average fan.
Yeah, I say the market share is down 40% if there's no wagering on it. That's why the NFL, we used to tell them, guys, look, we're the watchdog in Vegas. This was before you know, this became so global. We said, we're the watchdog. We're going to let you know if there's something fishy, the line's going to move too much. We're the first ones that are going to cry wolf, you know. And second of all, it's we're promoting the product.
Well, we actually had a lot of comments on this because we were talking about Brian Flores and the whole getting paid $100,000 to lose, or not getting paid, but getting offered. And people were saying, hey, why are you talking about this as gambling is getting more prevalent in the States? And I'm like, actually, legalized gaming probably makes this less relevant, right? If you're an offshore book, like, there's no regulation or anything. So if a bunch of like shady stuff is coming in offshore, maybe people have information about, like, let's say Flores took the you know, the 100K to lose, then those numbers are going to move. But where they originated from, it is completely, you know, we have no clue because it's offshore. But whereas with you guys and other legal books, you sort of know. And that was, to me, I think it's actually going to clean up the game a little bit more if it was dirty at all, because a lot of this information goes from out of the shadows to something that's more regulated.
I agree with that. You remember the incident with the ref? I can't remember his name.
Tim Donaghy.
Yeah, exactly.
Legend.
Oh
my God.
Yeah, there wasn't one of those bets made in Las Vegas.
Or Arizona State too. I mean,
I was in the middle of that one. That one, I was absolutely right in the middle of that one. Yeah, the guy that bet him, not Hedrick Smith, but he's the guy who did throw the games, or not necessarily throw them, but keep the point spread at a certain level. But a couple of those guys were my customers at Bally's, and they were friends with the guy who down in Arizona State. Okay. And so they had that information. So they were betting with me. They were betting at the Mirage. Now, the story goes, if you saw it on Netflix, wherever it was, that the last bet he made was I think it was 5 million. There's no way he got down
Yeah,
5
yeah, I was
million
gonna say.
on a college basketball game around town. Now, I was pretty aggressive. I'm taking 10 dimes a pop on a game. And Jimmy Vaccaro over to Mirage, he's probably taking that. But there's places taking 300, 500. Impossible to get 5 million down.
Well, without flashing up a bunch of
Right.
signals.
I mean,
right?
that's
Like,
going to be.
So anyway, there were 3 or 4 games in a row. They moved 7 points. The wise guys had no idea what was going on, so they were buying them back. So we didn't get that hurt on the games. And then Jimmy, I think Vaccaro from the Mirage, called the game control board, who called the Pac-10 at the time, informed
But
them.
that just shows you how efficient it is, because
Yeah.
3 or 4 games is almost nothing, right? Like, you guys basically were able to detect it relatively quickly, whereas the Donahue stuff was more widespread and long-term. And as you said, because it was offshore. I mean, imagine if you scope that out to the entire, to basically the entire country, like, these things are going to be squashed relatively quickly.
It's amazing that we made it through 3 years of Hugh Jackson doing it and no one found out. So the average is the second part of that first question I asked. So the average sports bettor, they want to bet football because they want to watch football. But the sharp bettors, they're not betting on NFL football, are they? Where are the sharp bettors coming in? What are you seeing in terms of like people that are actually doing this with the real intent of making money? Where are they going to get their bets? Like, what sports are they keying in on?
There's sharp bettors in every aspect of sports. There's some that are very, very good at golf, tennis, and there are that are football's their game. What they do is, first of all, they're good handicappers, but there's the arbitrage guys too. Now, what the arbitrage guys do is try to put themselves in a position of a bookmaker. So on this game, if this team wins, I'm going to win 6,000. But if they lose, I'm going to lose, 5,200. They put themselves in a spot where they're going to win more than they're going to lose. So that's what the arbitrage does for them. But there's some guys out there that are just flat out good. They just are. And when those guys bet, I don't care. See, people say, what moves the line? What moves the line is a sharp play. I've had guys bet $1 million on a game and not move the line, and I've had guys bet 500 and move a full point. So.
Enough about mattress math.
Yeah, I was gonna say, right? It depends where that money is coming from. Let's talk briefly about the Super Bowl here and this line, which opened 4, has been 4.5. As of right now, it's 4. Not sure at this
it
very
depends
moment.
upon the
What have you seen throughout the past couple of weeks with respect to this matchup from a sharp money perspective?
Geez, not much.
Really?
The total, a little when we first opened, 49.5, was driven down to 48.5, and we're still sitting there. But the line 4.5, we bounced back and forth a few times between 4.5 and 4, which is very unusual because the Super Bowl usually the open number might be a little off and it will get to a spot and then hang there. But this one was spot on as far as the two-way action. Now, two-way action, we're getting it, but we're heavy on the Bengals side, and we are heavy on the Bengals money line. The total's going to be bet over. There's no question about it because nobody wants betting under. Of course, they want to root for over, and that will be in every parlay and same game parlays and anything that's tied up in a parlay.
Yeah, very strange line in that, like, this is the most the favorite's been favored by in almost a decade, right? 4.5. I mean, I think we had New England, Philadelphia was also 4.5.
The great Nick Foles.
A few other, and then 48.5 is the lowest the total's been since that game, right? And all the games have gone under basically since that game. So it's kind of, there's interesting trends going on here, but I think you're right. I mean, you don't think the total will move much, even though it'll get bet a ton over because of all the
I think it's going to jump. I think it's going to jump up at least a tick to 49. Okay. Game day could go to 49.5.
Okay.
And there's a lot of little shops that move pretty aggressively. They want to kind of get off it a little. So you could maybe find a Ram money line in Vegas. I bet you could shop around and find a Ram money line at -160 the day of, or find a total at, if you wanted to bet under, you might find a total at 50.5 or, wherever they've gotten hit. So and to answer your question before, the sharp guys are always shopping for the best number, regardless of who has it. If I have it, they're going to bet with me, or if some small mom and pop shop has it, they're going to bet with them.
Right, and that's why the bet percentages and all that kind of stuff are a little bit misleading, because it's not necessarily who bet whom, it's at what number, right? And that's extremely important in a game like this.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing that is really powerful with bettors is they like are very keen on, oh, show me the splits, tell me where the money is versus the tickets. Is that something that you ever look at and you're like, oh, this is meaningful in some way, or are you having to Eric's point, split it out by number to get a sense of whether that
the only time I look at it is when I'm going to talk to you guys, because you're going to ask me what side, were we heavy? And I'm going to tell you, we're heavy. We've got 56% on the Bengals and we've got 44% on the Rams. That's the only time I don't care about it. Besides that, I really don't care.
It's funny because it's like really powerful for people because they feel like they're on, I don't want to be the idiot that's betting with the public, right? I want to feel like I'm smart. It's all about how people feel. As you look forward in betting, so obviously it has changed a ton over the past couple of years. Like I can now go on my phone and I can see a sports book on my phone, but there's still a ton of inefficiencies. We're still in the infancy of what sports betting looks like. Even in Vegas, it's relatively hard to go on certain sports books and actually get a bet down. What's something that you think is coming soon that maybe we're not aware of yet, but that will be a part of our kind of daily betting lives in the near future?
We're always trying to reinvent ourselves at DraftKings. We're trying to come up with new things. Now, that app we have, if you guys have a DraftKings app, it's a great app. It is efficient and it's easy to navigate around. There's a lot of content on it. It's easy to make your bet. The one thing I'm probably most proud of the DraftKings app is every time we go into a new state, New York recently and Louisiana, we flip the switch that day and we're off and running, and we have no issues.
That's very different than a lot of other books where they make you sign up for in individual state and all that. You're right, it is the most slick app as far as like going from state to state and all that.
And we developed it. We didn't rely on anybody else. Right. That's why I think it worked. I mean, DraftKings, when you come right down to it, is really a tech company. Okay, tech
Aren't
company
we all like at this point, right?
It's exactly. A tech company with sports, DFS, and casino, but operators. But we've had some great minds there develop that app, and I love it. I think it's tremendous.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think one of the areas that I've been interested about, and it's been weird with COVID because we haven't had social gatherings, but betting is such a social thing. And how does betting become more of a part of social gatherings? You go to Vegas, you go to Circa, for example, and you can be in a pool watching the game, you see the lines, and yet even there, to place a bet, I gotta go walk down to a kiosk and withdraw from an ATM and get a bet down. And thinking about how those experiences, whether I'm in a bar, whether I'm in a stadium, can become so much easier for people to bet. I think that'll open up, who's betting, the way that they're enjoying the game. That to me is the area that I feel like can be.
And I love it, and I'm glad you're thinking it that way, and I'm thinking that way too. What I want to do is contests are really popular. People love contests. What I want to do is have a contest, let's say in Arizona, right? I want to go down to Arizona and I want to go to a big bar down there. I'm going to tell everybody we're having a contest Saturday only. And it's all about baseball or NBA playoffs or hockey playoffs, all that's going on. So it's a $100 buy-in or $200 buy-in. Everybody, if you want to meet at the bar, that's where we're going to be, DraftKings. But you can play from other places outside the state. And so that social gathering that you're talking about, that's what that would provide. And I'm totally on board in doing something like that. I don't want any of my competitors out there taking the idea.
Don't worry, I've already copyrighted it. In fact, when I was at Stadium Swim the last time, I told them how it needed to work, but I made them sign an NDA first. So they can't use my idea for the iPads and the free drinks and all that stuff that comes with your first bet. That's
yours, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we'll have to buy you so that we could do. Okay.
Exactly. But it'll be a fun time. That's the important thing. Important thing. Johnny, we really appreciate you hanging out with us. This was great. I'm going to ask you to place a bet figuratively on the game. Doesn't have to be the spread. Doesn't have to be Rams or Bengals. If you had to make one bet on the Super Bowl, what would it be?
Well, I am going to bet the Super Bowl. Of course, not with DraftKings, but I'm going to bet. In-game wagering. That's one way I'm going to bet it. But if you told me I had to pick, one bet from the main three.
You can pick in game. You just have to explain how you're going about thinking about it. Okay. As people that love to bet in game,
of course.
Yeah.
This is great content.
So we have no Brady, we have no Patriots, no Aaron Rodgers, no Mahomes.
Yeah.
We have two.
No Jimmy G.
No, we have two quarterbacks that one's brand new in the league, won a national championship, so he's experienced in big games. And then we've got Stafford, who's really not much success in the NFL. They may come out in the game and try to open it up with a long pass initially, but I think this game is played close to the vest.
Yeah.
So I would expect that it's going to be slow scoring early. So I'm going to see how that pattern goes. If it is, then it probably kills any bet for me if I, thinking under. But if it's not, if somebody scores quick, the total might jump back up, and that's when I might jump in. So, I'm going to look at it. Who knows? I could bet the over too if the whole pace of if the game changes too. So
both teams run the ball way too much on early downs and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think when you look at the way, it's kind of interesting. I want to just my last question is going to be when you look at the full game line versus the first half line, right? Like and I know it's because of the value of the 3 and everything, but it's interesting that Cincinnati's +3 first half and they're +4, 4.5 full game, when I think what you're maybe describing is this idea of them playing close to the vest early and then maybe by necessity opening it up at the end. That maybe plays to the underdog being a better bet in the first half than it does in the full game.
Yeah, from bookmakers' terms, we probably should have used 2.5 on this as the first half because there's going to be Bengal action. So why put it? Why give the full value? Because you cut two and cut. Usually the first half is half, but a lot of bookmakers
2.5 has more value in the first half than full game, obviously, because it can end in a tie, and the Super Bowl can end in a tie, but a regular season game rarely does anyway.
Yeah, and 3 gives you the full value if you like the underdog because bookmakers like to put it on a number that it falls most of the time. Yeah. But since Cincinnati's money's been coming in on the game itself, there's no reason why it's not going to come in on the first half also.
Yeah. It reminds me actually of the Niners-Rams game where that ended up being our favorite bet in that game. And Eric rightly, kind of called that out. It's like, hey, if you like Niners for this whole game, you should like them +3 in the first half. Yep. And obviously you should have liked the money line too. And then have the collapse coming and bet the Rams live. But that's a story for another day. I'm only a little bit bitter about
I'm
that.
a little bitter too. I had the 49ers. I had a future ticket on the 49ers. I'm bitter about the Bills. I had the Bills in that game. With the bet in game, I took +$2.
Okay.
I took the money line before the game started. I think I took +$0.10, and then and I had the future back. So 13 seconds. Come on.
I know.
I can't get home in 13
Chiefs
seconds.
had 2 games this year where
and then they completely shat the bed in the next game.
Chiefs had 2 games this year that went into overtime and they covered only because of overtime. Yeah, the LA Chargers game in that game, which I imagine a lot of people are on the other side of the Chiefs this year because they're not good at covering the spread over the last 2 years. So they got lucky and covered against the Bills and the Chargers down the stretch, and that was basically it.
Yeah, no, it was. And we had some friends who are obviously Bengals fans because we're from Cincinnati, and one really bold fella decided to go bet the Bengals live down. Was it 17 or whatever it was in the playoff game?
21.
Yeah, 21-3. And this is the best story that
plus
I have.
20,
this
what do you
whole...
get? Like plus 2,200? I should say 22 to 1.
Yeah, exactly. But the best story about it is he wins the bet, and we're at Stadium Swim, and he's got a Chiefs fan. It wasn't actually Eric, might have been related, because everyone in Kansas City is. And
Unreal.
comes over and is giving him shit, and he goes, "You know what? I think you need this more than me." Took the ticket, tossed it at her, and walked away.
Oh boy. Ooh.
So just giving back to the people. Johnny Avello, this was awesome. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
This was a lot of fun, and good luck with the in-game betting. We'll be doing the same.
I think in-game's going to be huge this year. Although my prediction is that this will be record-breaking Super Bowl for us.
Yeah.
I saw some of the projections out there. Everybody's feeling the same way. 2 teams that new blood, so that helps. People think that maybe wouldn't be like Mahomes taken away from, but no players are bigger than the game itself.
I lied. I have one more question. Okay. Do you think how soon will live betting, if it hasn't already, be more prevalent than pregame betting?
It's catching up. It's still going to be a few years
Okay.
because pregame is still big, but it's catching up.
I'll take the under on 2 years.
Okay.
Thanks to Johnny for hanging out with us. That was a lot of fun.
It was great.
Really cool dude. And I gave him $1 million idea. So hopefully when he decides to make that happen, he comes to us.
Yeah,
I feel like we made a good impression. So we'll see how that goes. That was our last podcast from Los Angeles. We'll be back in Cincy, baby.
So Sunday?
What are we doing? What's our game plan here?
We're watching the game together, aren't we?
Yeah, of course.
In
the office,
the hometown
baby.
Bengals taking it down. Do we want to do a live watch? We can't do a live watch on
No,
Chris' show. Chris' show.
It's
But
NBC.
Yeah, it's Chris's. But post game, I will do a very sober post Super Bowl show.
Oh, are we going to do a post Super Bowl show? Okay.
I think so. Well,
Okay.
Don't you think?
Let's
Close
do
it
it
out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a long day for me. We got to figure out what we're going to eat. Anyways, that was our show. We love you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. We will see you Sunday night.